to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. And today I have the privilege of being in conversation with the founder and owner of Heavy Seas Beer, which is celebrating 26 years of brewing craft beer in Baltimore and has taken a complete 180 from their typical beer brewing and recently announced their new line of canned crafted cocktails. Please welcome Hugh Sisson. Welcome to the podcast.
Absolutely. I feel welcome.
Thank you for coming on, and congratulations. I want to start off with that. For being honest, you got to say congratulations when you do nearly 3 decades. You corrected. You had to 27, so nearly 3 decades. So congratulations.
Well, I've actually been doing this for 33 years because I had my family and I started the first brew pub in the state of Maryland. So I started brewing there in 1989.
Oh, wow.
And then left that company at the end of 94 to start this venture. So we're closing up 27 years on the current venture, but I've been doing this for a long ass time.
Well, that's great to hear. And it's great to hear about longevity and all of that great stuff. So as we start off, I want to go really high level and ask about what was the thinking in getting into brewing, craft brewing and so on? What was the thinking that brought you to the initial venture, which led to, Heavy Seas?
Well, I was in the bar restaurant business. My family owned a little bar in what at the time was an emerging area of Baltimore. And I was running it and I didn't know anything about business, but I knew that there were 8 bars on our block and we needed to do something to be different. So I turned the family bar called Sisson's into a beer joint back in 81 and 82 when nobody was doing this. That sort of led me to doing, informal beer tastings, a la like wine tastings. Yeah. In order to learn what I was talking about, I started doing some home brewing, which I did badly. And then in about 84 or 5, my father and I got this crazy idea, what would happen if we could actually make beer here in our bar? Yeah. I think there were 2, maybe 3 operating brew pubs in the entire country at that time. It wasn't legal in most of the states. So we did a bunch of research to figure out if we could actually do it. We did kind of figure it out. In 1987, we introduced a bill in the Maryland legislature to legalize brew pubs. I fully expected it to fail. It passed. So I had the requisite OF moment and had to get my fanny in gear. And in 1989, we became the first brew pub in the state of Maryland. And so that's how that happened. And then, as I alluded to earlier, I stayed there for another 5 years or thereabouts, and then finally left to strike out on my own, which is how Heavy Seas / Clipper City Brewing Company came to be.
Thank you for walking us through that history in an abbreviated way, because as you said, you got the scars to prove it. So I'm sure there's a lot more in there.
Well, the whole thing is right, wrong, or indifferent, and all ego aside, I really helped blaze the trail for all of this craft beer stuff in the state of Maryland. And when you're the first guy, you don't know where this is going to go. I mean, right. I remember, because I had to go back to the state legislature on numerous occasions lobbying for this change or that change. And I remember walking into a legislative session one year and some gentleman looked up at me and said, "Oh, Mr. Sisson, what do you want now?"
That's great. It's like, when it's like you said, you touched on when you're the first person and you're kind of making that move, you don't have much of a safety net and you're like, no. I got to figure this out.
There's no template to follow. Right. We had to figure all this stuff out. There's 8,000 new breweries in the last 8 years in this country. And the conversations now run something along the lines of, "Hello? Yes. I'd like to order a brewery, please. Yes. Next week will be fine. Thank you." We didn't have any of that.
Right.
We had to really figure this stuff out from the ground up.
Things have changed. So
they have.
So in doing that, the research or what have you, and reading over, a bit about, Heavy Seas. So, 27 years now, and words like, and I believe they're on the website, fearless, bold, and independent. Mm-hmm. What, if you will, what would be the next 3 words in describing your brand of cocktails now and your brand of beer? What would be those next 3 words?
One would be terrified. Um, one
Honesty.
one would be, well, you can be fearless, bold, and independent, but nobody says you can't be scared. All right. I mean, it says fearless, but yeah, come on. I think the other thing is, it's not just a single word, but courage of your convictions. I mean, you have to be willing to reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you have, we said fearless, and that implies the courage, but it's, it's you've got to be innovative, and you've got to have the courage to be innovative, and then comes terrifying.
Yeah, and I think that goes into this vein of, I think it takes it takes courage to create. It takes courage to kind of do things differently. And when you're the first, you have to be like, I got to figure this out. I got to do this. And, this is the goal. And sometimes it's going to be different bumps in the road and different things that are kind of impediments. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's all right. So I've been an entrepreneur now for basically my entire adult life.
Sure.
One of the lessons that I've learned about being entrepreneurial is there is no fixed path. Right. You start going down this way, and then all of a sudden you look and go, oh, that's an interesting opportunity over there. Maybe I should. And so it's a constant thing of sort of, tweaking the sails, as it were. Anybody who's ever been a sailor knows that there's no such thing as a straight line.
Right.
So I think you have to be willing to accept the fact that there's no such thing as a straight line. Yeah. And that's not an easy thing for a lot of people, to accept. And inherent in the fact that there's no straight line means that you are going to constantly be finding yourself in a position of risk.
I like to use the car sort of analogy or what have you, like, in some of the things that I'm doing and doing this podcast and doing it at the rate in which I'm doing it, I'm like, I'm carving my own lane. And
you are.
When I tell people how long I've been doing it, it's like 14 years, really? It's like, before this became a thing.
Yeah. Well, so you understand where I'm coming from.
I do.
Yeah. I mean, you are absolutely, you're cutting your own way, and it's, I really wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, this is all I know. I think I'd be a terrible employee. But this is all I know. So I'm stuck.
So for folks that are in that sort of spot where they know that they're not going to be able to work for someone else, they have to kind of do their own thing and carve their own path, make their own lane, not sail in that sort of straight line. What do you believe contributed to the longevity and the success of Clipper and now Heavy Seas?
Oh, well, I think, part of it is clearly tenacity. I mean, it's a truism, but failure was never an option.
Sure.
So no matter what happened, I had to figure out how I was going to, and there were a lot of bumps in the road, and there are still bumps in the road. I mean, the beer business is tough business right now. I mean, beer has been losing share of alcohol beverage dollars to wine and spirits, particularly spirits, for the last 10 years or so. So, yeah. So the beer market isn't growing. Right. And when you've got 8,000 new competitors, albeit on the small scale, in that sense, I mean, how many times can you cut that slice of pizza?
This is true. This is true.
So tenacity is a major thing. The other thing that I believe is critically important is you have to understand the basic finances. Mm-hmm. I mean, you see all these things where they're saying, we'll take care of your books. Well, you know what? That's great. But if you don't really understand what your financial statements are telling you, you're screwed. Yeah. I mean, you have to understand that. So, and I think the third thing that is critically important is you really, really, really need to understand your market, and also understand that your market is going to be constantly evolving. Yep. There is no such thing as I'm done.
Set it and forget it.
I had a hard lesson to learn when I first started working at the bar restaurant, because my undergraduate and graduate work was in theater. Okay. And as somebody who was directing plays, you did all of your experimentation and rehearsal, and then theory, once the curtain opened and your show opened, you're supposed to do it exactly the same.
Yeah.
Well, so when I first got into business, it was, okay, how do I get it to where it's perfect and then just leave it alone? And then I rapidly figured out there's no such thing as leave it alone. And I think once I became comfortable with that notion, I wouldn't say it was any easier, but at least it was to live with.
Yeah. One of the pieces of advice that I got in kind of transitioning, because I have a business side of what I'm doing and this creative side of things. And
right.
I remember speaking to someone about building my website, and they're like, oh, your website's never done. You're always tweaking. You're always working on it. Yeah. And as you said, it's almost the same thing with, I always joke about painters. You're never done painting. You just kind of stop, it's just so you touched on it a moment ago, like how it's a smaller slice of the pizza, smaller piece of the slice. And I look at podcasting the same way, where what sets you aside, what makes you unique in this really crowded, like overblown sort of industry. And I always looked at craft brewing as imaginative. So where do some of the ideas come from? Like, tell me about that.
It's not easy. I mean, I've been doing this for, as we said earlier, a long, long, long time. So when all of us who were really there in the beginning were first getting started, to differentiate yourself, all you had to be was not Budweiser.
Right.
Okay. Well, them days are gone. Yeah. Because you can't walk into a store now without seeing a mountain of different brands, et cetera. So it's harder and harder to differentiate yourself. It has led to the creation of a bunch of beers that probably should never have been created.
Right.
And part of the reason for that is, so IPA is the dominant style of beer in craft beer. Mm-hmm. If you're a brand new brewer starting up, you're going to make an IPA. But how are you going to differentiate yourself from, if you're in this mid-Atlantic market, you've got me and Dogfish and a number of other players who are already dominating the IPA category in this area. So what are you going to do to be different? And there's some really funky stuff going out there. Some of it's actually pretty interesting. Yeah. Some of it probably shouldn't have been brewed, but that's all right. And having said that, I'm not a beer snob. It's all completely subjective. Yeah. There is no one best bottle of beer. It's what somebody likes that's important.
Sure.
So, but yeah, differentiation is challenging. And when you create a brand, you have to create a personality that brand carries. And then you've got to be willing to let it evolve, because people evolve. So it's, sometimes it evolves in good ways. And sometimes you go, wait a minute, I think we turned left when we should have turned right. Oop, come on, double back. Let's get back where we belong now. Come on, let's go.
It's like that new and improved Coke back in the day.
Yeah. Every marketing study they did told them that was the right thing to do.
You fools.
Yeah. Talk about stepping on your schwanz.
Nice. I'll say, like, when I go to like pick up beer, pick up drinks, whatever, especially during this time of the year's football season, I joke with my girlfriend. I'm like, yo, look, we need beer. Like, what are we doing? The game is in two minutes. Like, what can we just get some beer? And I take so long looking for beer because I'm looking for something in terms of the branding, something in terms of, like, if I'm going with my kind of standards, everyone has a certain beer that they go with. Sure. But, if I'm going to be a little risque and I like to try new things, I'm looking at the branding. I'm looking at, does this seem interesting? Things of that nature, like you were touched on with some of these funkier things that are coming out. What are some of the considerations within, like, the branding and how Heavy Seas is presented?
Well, we've had this pirate theme for years, and so I think that it's important that we kind of stay true to that concept. Yeah. We've refined it over the years. We've made it a little less "quote unquote" CGI graphic, comic. We've kind of stepped away from the comic book thing. But I don't think you can't completely lose sight of the fact that it's still a pirate and it still should be fun.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, that's the way we're trying to continue to move the brand. Loose Cannon is our best selling product. Loose Cannon is actually going to be 20 years old in 2023.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to be making some noise about that because it is considered one of the top, 20 or 30 IPAs in the whole country. And I think it deserves the accolades, but Loose Cannon was also the perfect name for a beer because everybody kind of gets a twinkle in their eye. So we're now inventing this new line called Impending Doom, which is even bigger than Loose Cannon. And I think we're going to kind of really wrap our arms around that going into 2023. And there'll be a whole variety of styles that are all about that. And that's also about, not only innovation, but embracing what the whole branding thing is all about. When we've tried to do lower ABV products, we have not been very successful. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because it doesn't fit with whatever else we've done.
Right.
So if we want to continue to do some of those products, and there's probably merit in doing that, we probably need to figure out another branding strategy just for those products.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, it makes sense logically, but making it happen from an executional standpoint is always a challenge. We did the same thing with these new cocktails we've got in the can. We named them so it's part of the Heavy Seas crafted cocktails, but the packaging is very different, and it's probably it's some of the same customers that we've already got, but we did it specifically under the Heavy Seas brand because all of the retailers who are God bless them, willing to carry our products, we hope that they will then be willing to carry these as well based on the success of the other products.
So, and I want to come back to that a little bit towards the end, but I want to ask this one question about in terms of like history, fondest memories, things of that nature. So like speak about, a few things that really stick out during this last 27 or even further back in the 34 years of you in this industry that really has stuck out for you and that, okay, that was a fond memory. I would imagine the legislation is a piece of it of like, yeah, we got it.
Well, yeah, I mean, getting the legislation passed has been fun. We also formed a Brewers Association of Maryland, which I was a co-founder of, and was very active on the board up until about 3 years ago when I finally said, I got to step down, guys. Come on, let's go. And a lot of people stepped up, which was great. I think one of the fondest memories I have, because when we first opened Clipper City / Heavy Seas, it was a tough go. I mean, it was really hard in 90, 96, 97, and 98. Yeah. And I remember distinctly one day I came into work and my, at the time, brewmaster production manager came to me and said, Hugh, we have this, it's a piece of equipment. He says, it's about to fail. We're going to have to replace it. And I knew we were looking at, if we could even source it, we were looking at a $25,000 to a $35,000 hit. And I looked down and I looked at the finances, and then I realized that wasn't going to kill me. And that was a great day. Because 6 months earlier, that might have been oh God. Now, as it turned out, we were able to solve the problem a lot less expensively, but just all of a sudden looking up one day and say, I'm going to live to fight another day. If you're an entrepreneur, that's a good damn day.
Yes.
Another good day was, when we first brought out Loose Cannon and we had these really killer pirate tap markers that we were using, and we were out trying to sell in draft accounts, and we were just getting yeses all over the board. And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, this is at this stage, it's 8 years worth of really hard work, and we finally got something that everybody seems to want to get involved with. So those are rewarding things. And when you built something from scratch, I mean, you got a whole lot of kicks in the ass that you take along the way. So when you get your wins, you got to enjoy them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I had this one small one the other day. You touched on being an entrepreneur and just some of those wins, you got to take them. Like, I'm doing both. I'm doing this, and I had the day job. And
right.
I remember I had a few windfalls come from some work I did, some contractual work I did, and the next day happened to be payday and I was like, oh, I get paid tomorrow? I wasn't expecting that extra money. This is great.
Gotta love it.
Yeah.
Gotta love it. I mean, like, there's so much stuff it's just not easy. And we all see the stories in the media about the folks who, in 2 years, they went from, $1,000 in revenue to $25 million in revenue.
Yeah.
But those are few and far between.
Yeah. That's the exception.
And it's way the exception. So most people who are doing their own gig are working their little tushies off. And that's why I think it's important that, small business people are looking out for how they can help support other small business people.
100%. So I got this last real question. I still got some rapid fire questions for you, but this last real question, I want to tap back into the crafted canned cocktail. So like, how did that come up? How was it pitched? And let's talk about the flavors. Like, how did the team come up with the flavors?
Well, it came up because, as I mentioned earlier, beer has been losing share to particularly spirits for like the last 10 years.
Sure.
So, just staying a standalone brewery, it's getting harder and harder. So, at some point you got to diversify what you're doing because the market is shifting.
Yeah.
So we looked at the seltzers, and the problem with that was to actually execute that correctly was going to require a pretty significant capital investment on our part. And by the time that looked like that was something we might be interested in doing, that market was just really crowded. And understand that I want to say 75, 80% of the seltzer business is two companies. One is Truly and the other one is
White Claw.
What's the other one? Yeah, White Claw, which is Mike's Hard Lemonade and Sam Adams.
Yeah.
So they're the dominant players. So when the RTDs, ready to drink, cocktails on the can thing started to emerge, that was something we could do with a significantly smaller capital investment.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant that it was feasible. Secondly, my brewmaster and our quality team leader are two really talented guys.
Yeah.
So I felt that that I could with great confidence get them involved in this project and then let them run with the ball. Now we knew we wanted to make an orange crush because that's the ubiquitous cocktail from this particular area.
Yes.
Other than that, I let them pretty much figure it all out from there. I mean, we got market input. We all went out and bought a bunch of stuff on the shelves and tasted through some things and decided kind of maybe we want to go in this direction. Some of it was predicated on what did we think we can execute at a high level because, I don't want to make anything that's not good.
Right.
Now, granted, good is subjective, but one of the things that's important to do if you're going to be successful as an entrepreneur is, and this is not an easy lesson for many of us, you've got to surround yourself with good people and then let them do what they do. And I'm not always the easiest person to do that. But in this particular instance, I let these guys do what they were supposed to do, and they did a great job. I mean, the flavors are watermelon crush, orange crush, cherry limeade, and strawberry lemonade. And we may add some more stuff in the future, although this is so early on in our thing, we haven't really gotten the market penetration yet that way, and we probably won't until springtime with those four flavors. So I don't think we need to be in a hurry to add anything new just yet, but we'll have to probably by the end of next year.
That's a strong group of four though. And like each one, like I can't think of one that I wouldn't want to drink if I'm being honest.
Well, it's really interesting. I did a sampling at a big beer festival thing down in Easton, Maryland, a couple of weeks back, and I was pouring my beer, but I was also pouring these things, and I mean, people were coming up because they wanted to try these things. So it was pretty gratifying. I mean, I was, and interestingly enough, they wanted to taste them all. So it was fun.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, it's very gratifying when you're sitting there and you love me. Oh yeah.
And you're getting it directly. You're like, oh, great. Come on over.
That's right. That's right.
So I got a couple rapid fire questions for you.
Sure.
They're fun questions. They're ridiculous questions. I've added 2 since we've been talking because I was like, these are going to be asked.
Okay.
So the first one I have, a place that you would most want to travel to.
Ooh, right now, probably New Zealand. I just got back from France like a week or so ago. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do you have a lucky number? If so, what is it?
I really don't.
Fair. That's fair. That's fair. I've had some people say, yeah, number 3. Every time I see a 3, I'm taking a picture of it. Or, like me, it's probably like 20 for some reason. I'm born in the 20s.
I say years ago, I chose number 7, but I haven't really paid attention to that for so long. So I don't know that it's still valid.
Okay, this is a very ridiculous one, but because of the nature of the branding and all you touched on earlier, name a pirate.
Edward Teach, for one. That's Blackbeard.
Cheers.
So here's a quick one for you, completely tangential. Yeah. So everybody needs a 30-second pirate joke. So the pirate walks into the bar. When he walks into the bar, the bartender looks down and notices he has a steering wheel sticking out of his posterior. He goes, "Oh, I bet that's gotta hurt." Says, "Yar, it's driving me nuts."
That's great. I like it. That's a good one. So this is the last one I have for you. I gotta maintain composure. I always like to get an idea of like what people eat, because I'm a foodie, right? What people eat. Uh-huh. What is your favorite food pairing with Loose Cannon? Like, most popular beer, most long, oldest beer and all of that good stuff.
Right. My favorite fooding, well, I'm really big on cooking ribs, slow cook on my big green egg. So I'd say a rack of ribs and a bottle of Loose Cannon is pretty perfect.
That sounds great. You're giving out suggestions there. I like it.
Okay.
So with that, I want to thank you for coming on to this podcast. That's pretty much it. And I want to invite and encourage you to tell the listeners where they can check out Heavy Seas, all of that good stuff, website, location, all of that good stuff, and where they can find it.
Yeah. Well, the website is www.hsbeer or heavyseasbeer.com. We do have a tap room at the facility, which is in Halethorpe, Maryland, just outside of Baltimore City on the southwest corner. There's a beer finder on the website, which will tell you where you can find our products at retail. We've got pretty good distribution all throughout the state of Maryland, DC, pretty decent in Virginia and Delaware. So, I mean, we really consider ourselves more of a mid-Atlantic brand than anything else. But we should be pretty easy to find. And if not, just go to the website. And even more, we're getting ready to renovate our tap room. So come by our tap room in about 4.5 months and come and have a good fresh beer right there.
That sounds great. So I want to, again, thank you. And I'll do my wrap up here. So for Hugh Sisson of Heavy Seas Beer, I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's beer, history, and even a bit of those canned crafted cocktails. You just got to look for them.